Okay, everyone. Well, it is 12:01, so we'll get started. And hopefully, if people are still popping on, that's okay too. We are recording this, so people will also be able to view the recording. But thanks so much for taking the time to jump on today and take a little time for you in this very busy season. December is certainly taken off and has added some extra things to our to-do lists with snowstorms and winter driving and all those types of things. So just to really appreciate you all being here today. And again, just kind of taking the time. So I think you all know me, but if not, my name is Linda Golik. I'm the Health and Wellbeing Consultant with Emplify Health in the Bellin region. And I put on a free health education series called the Lifesaver Wellbeing Series. And within that, we do bi-monthly webinars to really dig into the content a little bit more so we can learn a little bit more about these topics and also maybe just have some discussion around them and just help all of us learn a little bit more. So this particular campaign, we're kind of wrapping up Healthy Choices Life. This is our November, December campaign. So this is kind of the last element that's coming out. And for those of you that are signed up for our newsletters, you'll be getting some fresh content next week. We'll be kicking off our January, February campaign. So you'll get that next week. If you are already receiving those newsletters, you might have gotten a email about registering for 2026. You do not have to re-register. If you're already receiving the content, you do not have to sign up again. But if for some reason you're on our big list and you haven't been receiving that Lifesaver content, go ahead and sign up on bellin.org/lifesaver, and you'll start receiving that. Or perhaps, talk to a colleague or a friend that might benefit from this information and encourage them to sign up. So let's talk about healthy choices, healthy life, understanding the impact of substances and making positive choices. So one of our social drivers of health that we talk about, and one of our pillars in lifestyle medicine, is avoiding risky substances. So we're going to talk about choices today, both positive and negative, and how that has an impact on our health. And so I hope that this topic is pertinent to you. I think particularly surrounding the holiday season, when we tend to be underneath a little bit more stress than the average day, we may need some additional assistance when we're making choices and some additional support. So I'm hoping that this is a good topic for you all. So let's start out with, why do people use substances? And really, this can be a number of different reasons, right? Sometimes people get pulled into using substances because of peer pressure. Sometimes people are looking for some stress relief. They're looking for some kind of escape, and substances can give them that. It might just be curiosity sometimes. Probably many of us might have taken our first drink of alcohol or tried a cigarette just because we were curious about it. And then also it can be a way of coping with emotions. So when I'm referring to substances, that's going to be kind of a variety of things we talk about today. We're going to talk about tobacco products. We're going to talk about alcohol, and then we're going to talk about drugs, both prescription and illegal drugs. So let's talk about kind of the root of maybe what substances are connecting to by starting out with a little bit of a lesson about dopamine. So if you are not familiar with what dopamine is, it's really referred to as the feel-good chemical. And dopamine is a chemical that is made in our brains that sends out messages between nerve cells. And it is the chemical that is connected to reward and pleasure, connected to motivation, movement, and then also learning and memory. So dopamine is the chemical that makes us want to do more of something. So when we're talking about reward and pleasure, dopamine comes from eating chocolate. So that's why we always want more of it if you're a chocolate fan. As far as movement goes, dopamine makes us want to move more. So even sometimes people talk about getting addicted to exercise. And what that really is that's the dopamine rush that people are experiencing. The other thing I always like to bring up about dopamine is what happens when you are scrolling on this little guy. So we are getting doses of dopamine, and that is what keeps us scrolling. That is what keeps us scrolling. So marketing people have figured out that, and so they try to engage you in content that keeps you scrolling because that's how they sell more stuff. Okay, so just a little familiarity about dopamine, but dopamine also comes from unhealthy things that we get addicted to. So how do these substances then affect dopamine? Well, an unhealthy substance actually increases the dopamine artificially. So it isn't like the good stuff that we get from things like exercise. Okay, it's a little bit different. And what it tends to do is it disrupts our natural systems and it leads to addiction because you're always wanting more of it. So it's going to continue to take more to reach that high. And so sometimes people are curious about how can someone drink as much as they now are, or how can someone put that many drugs into their body? Well, it's because they've kind of increased that tolerance over time, but also what they're craving more of that dopamine. And so that's what leads to the addiction and leads to people wanting more and more and more of it. Let's first talk about the risks of drug use. And again, this can be prescription or it can be something that's illegal, and why those things can be damaging if used in excess. So, first of all, when we look at how drugs are affecting people in the short term, it is automatically altering your brain function and it's leading to risky behavior. And I'll even share something as personal as my husband had hernia surgery last week here at our wonderful Emplify Health by Bellin Hospital. And he's doing great. Everything's fine. Everything went super well. He's recovering beautifully. But they gave him a pretty significant painkiller, right, after going through surgery. And after a couple days of taking that, he said, I just feel dumb. I just feel dumb. So, we can start to see like these are the things that happen in the brain function whenever we're taking some type of a drug. And obviously, when we've gone through like a painful surgery, that's one of the things that we can go towards. But it doesn't come without that altered brain function, right? That's why they tell you that you can't drive. More for the long term, of course, it's going to lead to things like addiction, and then people who really have a problem with drug addiction, it really can take a toll on their organs in a variety of different ways. So obviously, something very dangerous that we want to pay attention to. Let's talk about alcohol, and when we talk about alcohol, and I know that here in our area of the country, it's a pretty widely accepted use of a substance. It's not illegal, and there's a culture surrounding that, but that doesn't mean that it can't be damaging for people and that some people may have some limitations with their use of it. So just so we're all aware, in the short-term use, again, we're going to have some impaired judgment when alcohol is being used. That's why we have limitations for people as far as what's considered drunk driving, what isn't, because your judgment is no longer good behind the wheel of a vehicle when you've had too much alcohol. And it can just lead to accidents. For the long term, of course, excessive uses of alcohol, again, lead to addiction. And then the big thing is the liver disease, the fatty liver, because that liver is working so hard to detox from all those toxins that are going into the body. And whether we want to admit this or not, alcohol is a toxin and it is a depressant. So again, we want to be just really careful how we use it. So I have a little video that I'm going to show to you, and we're going to pop into a different platform here so that you all can see this effectively. I'm gonna show you the effects of alcohol. And if you're not looking at the screen right now, please do, because this video is actually going to be just some music with some visuals. So you'll be able to see that once we share here. We got to flip through the commercial. Here we go. All right. Anything stand out to anybody in that video? Was there anything that was kind of surprising to you or something you hadn't really considered before? Feel free to put that in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself and share, that would be fine too. We're a small enough group that we can definitely have a discussion on this. Any thoughts after seeing that video?
Oh, I'm looking in the wrong place. Hold on. There.
Hey, Scott.
I don't know if there's anything that surprised me, but it really, I was going to reach out when I was watching it. It was like, I want to reach out and ask, how can I find that too? I have a couple family members who struggle with this. And through many conversations over years, it doesn't always hit home, but sometimes I think just letting them see other things of how it can, affect them chronically and not just the hangover piece of it and stuff like that, that it might just hit home. So I loved it. But like I said, I don't know. Me being a nurse or whatever and around it, I don't know if I learned anything new, but it's always a good refresher. And
Yeah, I put the link in the chat. I just popped that in there. So if anybody else wants that link, I just thought, yeah, it was kind of a nice, simple video. And I think a lot of times with alcohol and risky substances, we're just really not thinking about what it's actually doing to our body. We kind of see it as a short-term thing that's very, culturally acceptable, and we don't always think about the long term. So I did want to just kind of share that information just from an educational standpoint. And yeah, thanks for sharing that too, Scott, how you may have family members that are struggling with this. And I think that's an important thing to talk about, especially this time of year, because we might be getting into situations with friends and family members that really do have a struggle with a risky substance. And I thought that this is just a great reminder of maybe actually what is going on with them. So it stood out to me in the video that they might have, short emotions, or however that was phrased, where, all of a sudden somebody turns on a dime and gets really upset about something or whatever. I mean, that could be connected to something that they are struggling with, right? So just a great reminder. Yeah, scary how people normalize drinking when it has all those awful effects in the body. Yeah, just a great reminder. All right, well, let's go back to our PowerPoint. All right, so let's talk about tobacco a little bit. This is another one. I mean, obviously, it's very widely known that tobacco is not a healthy thing for us. And certainly that has changed in our culture over time, right? I loved how some of my coworkers would always joke about, in a previous job I had, they joked about how they had this boss that had this big ashtray in his office and, would sit and smoke. Obviously, we don't have that going on anymore. We've come a long way in terms of that. But obviously, tobacco can still be a challenge for people, and it's something that we do as a healthcare system take into account when we're looking at people's health. So again, there are immediate and long-term things that can happen with tobacco. The thing that people don't always realize is that tobacco right away increases heart rate. And so many people talk about how smoking or vaping calms them down. And perhaps that is the psychological effect that they're having from it, but it's actually increasing your heart rate. And actually not in a good way, right? So it's not like when we're taking a nice brisk walk and we're getting that heart pumping. It's doing it because it's dealing with the toxins that we're putting into it. And obviously lung function is a concern. And then in the long term, tobacco can have effects, anything from cancer and heart disease, and even just in some of the family members that I've had, I can just see how they tend to get colds more. And they have a harder time, getting over those colds. We probably can even visually see the effects of somebody that might be a smoker, where they might just not have the good skin color that a non-smoker would have. So obviously there's lots of effects on that. Again, I have a video I want to share with you. So I'm going to pop onto the other screen to show you that. One of the things that I found so interesting as I was researching this topic was this idea of vaping. And I found that as much as I was aware of vaping, I actually honestly didn't know that much about it. And I didn't know the difference, the variety of differences between smoking and vaping. So I have a video I'm going to share so we can all learn a little bit more about that. The controls are over my video. Here we go.
High school students currently vapes in the US, and in the UK, 7% of kids aged 11 to 17 now vape. And that number has nearly doubled 2 years, so currently more young people vape than smoke cigarettes. But with the news of vape deaths amongst young people, the insane chemical flavor amongst new vapes, could science now say that vaping is worse than cigarettes? To start, the nicotine in vapes hits your bloodstream and brain faster than cigarettes. This is because vapes consist of a coil that ranges from 110 degrees Celsius to 1000 degrees Celsius, which creates thermal conditions for a carrier like propylene glycol, which is literally stage smoke. Yes, when you are vaping, you're inhaling like Taylor Swift stage smoke right into your lungs. Mixed with an active ingredient, most commonly nicotine, and chemical flavorings, the vape smoke hits your lungs in a way that studies show ushers nicotine faster into your bloodstream and brain than cigarettes. Another study found the way that people hit vapes so hard, bro. Each puff gives you more nicotine in vapes than in cigarettes. And nicotine is an intense drug. I always say that the hardest drug I did this year at Pride was when I hit someone's vape at a rave and I was ripped. This is because when you vape, the nicotine enters your bloodstream through the lungs, where it quickly makes its way to your head and passes through the blood-brain barrier directly into your brain. Here, the nicotine causes a series of complex biochemical processes to increase dopamine, cause feelings of motivation, awareness, concentration, elevated mood, and other neurochemical processes that will relax your muscles. Nicotine's an interesting drug. It makes you feel mentally aware and alert while physically relaxed. It's an amazing feeling that people get addicted to. As the nicotine rush ends, cravings begin. And most recent studies show that the cravings appear within 4 hours of your last nicotine. This whole process is more intense with the vapes than cigarettes because vapes have more nicotine in them. Nicotine also alters blood flow in your body, making people with penises lose their penis girth. Yep, a bit of watermelon ice can shrink your dick. One study found that men who use e-cigarettes are more than twice as likely to experience erectile dysfunction compared to who don't vape. 13,000 men aged 20 and older who had daily e-cigarette use were 2.2 times more likely to report having erectile dysfunction compared to men who had never vaped, regardless of other risk factors. Because ED is caused by nicotine and in vaping than cigarettes, in theory, you will get more erectile dysfunction from vaping. Now, you also may have heard of the mysterious vaping deaths that as of February 2020 had 2,807 patients hospitalized with severe lung injury, some of who were under 18 years old, and 68 people ended up dying. What you may not have heard is that these deaths were actually from THC vapes, which are less regulated than nicotine vapes. Some of the THC vapes had a chemical called vitamin E acetate in them, which when inhaled ravaged people's lungs and alveoli, leaving them with symptoms of coughing, wheezing, and chest pain. Doctors were shocked and scared at first, but the general consensus was that mistakenly there was vitamin E ending up in THC vapes, which was killing people. It created a disease called e-cigarette or vaping use associated lung injury, aka E-Valley. Now the hope is that there obviously isn't vitamin E acetate in THC vapes anymore, but again, E-Valley, the disease, was never caused in vapes. But that doesn't mean there isn't other wild chemicals in these vapes because of the flavoring. The concept of vaping was designed to be tasteless and ugly as a mechanism to help people quit cigarettes. But capitalism came a-calling, and to expand the vaping market, companies started adding flavorings to make people want to consume vapes. Formaldehyde, the artificial flavoring that creates cinnamon flavor in food, is now added to vapes to give them a cinnamony taste. But cinnamaldehyde also has been found to make the cilia in your lungs stop working, making it harder for your lungs to get rid of debris and expel, leaving you more vulnerable to lung infection. 2,5-dimethylpyrazine is added to vapes to make them chocolatey, and acetate is added to create a banana taste. These chemicals have been found to cause pro-inflammatory effects on the respiratory tract that lead to cancer. A recent
So as you can see, kind of interesting to think about the difference between tobacco and vaping and how that's becoming more and more a conversation that we're having, especially in our young people. The other thing that I wanted to share is that I had done a recent podcast with Michelle Gilbertson, and Michelle is actually a wellness specialist over in the Emplify Health by Gunderson region on the west end of the state. And Michelle has some interesting information to share about vaping too. And I'm not going to be able to play this whole podcast, but I just want to play a minute or two with some knowledge that she has. And then I would just encourage all of you to look at the Prescription for Life podcast, which you can find on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts to learn a little bit more from Michelle. She's one of our local resources.
Vaping was first initially invented in 2007 by a company in China, and it was originally invented as a way for cigarette smokers to still be able to smoke indoors. So in 2010, the state of Wisconsin enacted the smoke-free restaurants and bar workplace law, which made it illegal to smoke indoors in restaurants or bars. So this company in China thought it'd be a great idea to come up with a product so that people could still smoke indoors. E-cigarettes were also invented as a way for cigarette smokers to quit smoking cigarettes by switching to vapes. And in my 10-ish years of experience, I can maybe think of like 5 people that have been able to switch from smoking cigarettes to vaping and then quitting completely. Usually what happens is people quit smoking cigarettes, but then they switch to vaping and then they stay vaping because it smells good. It's pretty addictive, and they are never really able to quit vaping altogether. There's a lot about vaping and smoking that's very different. One of the things I always talk to people about that's a huge difference is if you think about a cigarette, a person knows when they're done smoking that cigarette because it burns down to the filter. They know to put it out, throw it away, whatever. But with a vape, if you're not paying attention, if you're hanging out with friends, if you're in a social situation and you're vaping, and you can, totally lose track of time, lose track of how many times you've hit your vape, and all of a sudden you can go through way more hits of your vape than if you were to be smoking a cigarette.
So again, just the differences in how vaping just does vary from cigarettes. And Michelle does a lot of work in the school districts doing presentations on vaping. So know that she is also a resource for our system. So if you're interested in that, certainly reach out and let me know. But I got a couple more slides to get through here, and then we will wrap up. So we talked about the unhealthy choices. Let's talk about the healthy choices. So when we talk about the things that we can choose to do that really do impact our health and well-being, here are some of those things. And again, in alignment with lifestyle medicine and what Emplify Health has done in that venue, it's the things we're doing every day. It's what we're choosing for nutrition. It's what we're doing for physical activity. Sleep is really a big one. How much sleep are we getting? Are we prioritizing sleep? Do we have quality of sleep? Stress management. There will always be stress in our life. We have to make a choice on how we're going to manage that. So thinking about that. And then relationships, being connected to other people is a really important part of our health and well-being. We've talked about that before, but as you're going through the holiday season, I really just encourage you to make sure you're spending time with people that you feel really, really connected to, that you feel like you can build yourself with, because that's really going to help you during the holiday season, and maybe you won't have as much stress, and that'll help you make those better choices. Do you want to talk for a minute about, where to get help if you do feel like you or someone you care about is struggling with a risky substance? And of course, whoever is struggling needs to be ready to get that help. But here are just some things that you may want to consider. So there are support groups, for different types of substances. You can look for that in your community. NAMI is a mental health resource that provides support groups and individual counseling and things. 211 is a resource throughout the state of Wisconsin. Of course, Alcoholics Anonymous is another one that can be in whatever region you are in. Our behavioral health therapy area here in the Bellin region, of course, Narcotics Anonymous is nationwide as well. The other thing to consider is that if somebody is struggling, this is where your primary care provider can also be really helpful. Having that conversation, letting that provider know, hey, I think I have a problem. I think I need a little bit of help. And they'll walk alongside you and help you get pointed in the right direction. So then how do we empower ourselves to continue to make some healthy decisions? First of all, it's okay to say no. So we talked in the beginning about how risky substances sometimes come because of peer pressure. And it's okay to say no and know that what's okay for someone else may not be okay for you. Also looking at how we can choose alternatives. Again, when it comes to maybe managing stress, can we choose to do something healthy? Can we choose to take a walk rather than reaching for another drink? Can we call our best friend rather than taking up smoking? Those types of things. So just think about the alternatives of what you can do to help yourself have a healthier existence. And then again, get support. Look for the resources, in your healthcare system, at your employers. Talk to people, what's available to you, and reach out because there is support. So just a reminder of the resources that are available through this series. So we have, of course, our Lifesaver Wellbeing campaigns, the podcasts, as we've mentioned. So that one with Michelle, you can look up under Prescription for Life. We do also have our mental health moments. And if you're interested in something a little bit more, we can talk to you about Coaching and Culture, which is some personal health coaching and some live and on-demand classes. Here's a story on how you really can change your life. So this is John. John was a spotlight for us from our Fincantieri employer partner. John had actually quit smoking and had lost 73 pounds. And he said, hey, I love my life. I wanted to live it longer, healthier for my family. And he's encouraging all of us, make your health a priority. Don't dwell on where you've fallen, but focus on the better path ahead. So it does show us there are success stories out there. We can do something different and, make a different pathway for all of us on our health and well-being journey. So what is one thing that will stick with you today from this presentation? What was something that surprised you, or what was something that stood out to you as you go into the rest of your week and your month? I would love to hear from you. So go ahead, put that in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself. Very good to hear AA and a sponsor changed one of my loved ones' lives. Yeah, absolutely. I actually have one of my husband's cousins who I'm super close with. She's been sober now for over 10 years. And I'm so inspired by her because she literally just came to a point in her life where she decided she didn't like who she was when she was drinking. And she decided to stop drinking and goes to AA and does all the things, is a wonderful advocate. And I have just watched her life blossom. It has been such a blessing. All the things that have happened to her because of setting aside, stepping away from alcohol. So I thought that was really, really cool. Focusing on healthy alternatives. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Dana. Awesome. Well, I appreciate all of you being here with me today. Hopefully you all have my contact information. If there's anything else I can do for you, if you want to have further conversations about this topic and others, again, watch your inboxes. Next week, you'll be getting, I'm really excited about our January, February campaign. We're talking about caring for the caregivers. There are millions of people in the United States that are unpaid caregivers, whether it be for an elderly parent or a disabled child. And we're really going to dive into that topic and talk about how we can support those folks, whether it's ourselves or other people that we know. So really excited about that. So thank you to everyone for being here today. Enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week. Happy holidays, everyone. Stay warm, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Take care.